So using AI and satellite imagery, this project looks at where people are located and it overlays that with connectivity data to look at who might not be receiving early warning alerts, mobile, digital early warning alerts. That really helps governments, regulators, mobile operators, humanitarians, because when you know there's a population that's not covered, you have to make sure they're reached in another way. Sirens, TV, radio. The best early warning system is when you use all these different channels.
Did you know?
Do you know how many countries in the world use mobile cellular broadcast technology as an early warning system? Stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear the answer. My name is Ian Ginn, and I'm the host of Digitel Talk. I'm delighted to have as our guest Kimberly Brown from the GSMA. Kimberly Brown is Head of Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation and Emerging Tech. Welcome to the podcast, Kimberly.
Hey, Ian, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So could you introduce yourself and your role in this mobile for humanitarian innovation?
Absolutely. So I lead two programs in our Mobile for Development Foundation at the GSMA. One, Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation, and the other is our Emerging Tech program. The GSMA is the Global Industry Association of Mobile Network Operators. And in our humanitarian work, we work with the mobile industry, humanitarian agencies, governments, to leverage really the vital role of mobile and connectivity before, during, and after disasters. And our work is supported by the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and also the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency.
Fantastic. What is I think you've sort of covered it in a way, but what is the mission of the program? And what are you prioritizing currently? Early warning, cash assistance, inclusive AI, what are the topics?
Yeah, well, humanitarian needs are at an all-time high now. There are actually over 400 million people in the world who are in need of humanitarian assistance and protection. And 120 million of those are forcibly displaced. So that's people who have been forced from their homes, some of them crossing borders as refugees. So our core mission in the M4H program, as we call it, is to drive safe and inclusive digital humanitarian assistance that really responds to those needs of those 400 million people. I've worked in humanitarian action, as we call it in the field. I've worked in that field for over 20 years. And 20 years ago, digital didn't really play a role in humanitarian assistance. And also public-private partnerships, mobile network operators weren't really seen as players in all this work. When we fast forward 20 years, that's completely changed.
Okay. So how does it reduce the risks, strengthen resilience, and support communities affected by conflict, climate disaster, and displacement?
Yeah, I mean, if I speak a little bit more to how we work, how we do things, we build the partnerships, we build the systems, the innovation that then enables this assistance. And I know we'll have some opportunities in our discussion to speak about some specific examples. But if we think about 96% of the world's population is covered by a mobile network. There are 5 billion unique mobile subscribers. So connectivity, digital services have changed all of our lives, but it's absolutely changed how we respond to emergencies. And it's changed how people in emergencies respond themselves or what they need. So as an example, before a crisis, you mentioned early warning systems. Exactly. Before a crisis, mobile networks and connectivity allow us to receive life-saving information so people can act. During a crisis, connectivity is a lifeline. So it means that people can connect with their loved ones, they can seek safety, and they can also receive humanitarian assistance And then after an emergency or after a disaster, it also helps people to rebuild their lives. They can seek employment, they can carry out education. So when we look at how connectivity has changed, it changed how we respond to emergencies, and it also changed what people expect in emergencies. When an emergency happened, what is the first thing people look for? It's their mobile phone, because they need information and they need to connect.
On that one, something I heard someone said: if an emergency, what would someone need first? And before water and food, for example, they said their mobile phone. So, as you say, it has certainly gone up the pecking order as to what people need. And related to your job, may I just come back to, you're working with these various agencies and governments. How's the GSMA, and in your role, how are you actually doing that on a day-to-day basis? What does your actual day-to-day job entail?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways that we deliver our work. So one is, an example is that we build the partnerships between mobile network operators, governments, disaster management agencies, and we provide technical assistance for them to develop and deliver digital services. So that a huge part of what we do is developing cell broadcast systems for early warning. Cell broadcast technology is a really effective technology for early warning systems. So as an example, in the Pacific Islands, we are working with the Pacific Islands Telecommunications Association to develop and implement that cell broadcast technology for early warning alerting, something that we have in several countries. Another key part of our work is that in 2023, we launched something called the Connectivity for Refugees initiative. And we did that with the UN Refugee Agency, the International Telecommunication Union, and the government of Luxembourg. And the aim of that initiative is to connect 20 million refugees and the communities that host them by 2030. I mean, we talked about connectivity for crisis affected populations. For refugees, when you cross a border, often refugees are not able to get SIM in their own name. They can't register for a SIM card. And they often don't meet something called the Know Your Customer requirements. So we've done a lot of work to highlight this challenge for refugees and to advocate for solutions for them. And we're delighted to have seen great progress. We saw several years ago in Uganda, but more recently in Kenya. Kenya has changed their policies so that refugees can now use their refugee ID to register for SIM in their own name. And so when people cross a border and are able to have connectivity themselves, it opens a huge amount of opportunity. They can work, they can connect with loved ones, they can learn, and they can contribute to the local economy. So we do advocacy to advocate for people's needs in emergencies, but we also give that technical support to develop and deploy the systems as well.
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
So is the chain of events, I mean, you talked about the providing the capability, technical capability advice, but if I come back to, because we were talking also about emergency services as well, and I know, let's say, as I think we're both based in the UK, and the government has now twice or whatever done these warnings to the population. I was in Germany and Netherlands where this has also happened while I've been traveling. And of course, I'm not subscribers there, but I still obviously got it because it's, you say, self-broadcasting. Are you asking the governments to make it mandating that governments should force the mobile operators to implement such a solution? Is that the way forward, or is it a voluntary scheme, do you think, the way that these countries are adopting this technology?
Yeah, we see fantastic partnership between mobile network operators, governments, regulators to develop these systems. So there are lots of different policy frameworks on how that is done. Often, for example, in Europe, there is something called the EECC 110 that mandates countries to be able to publicly alert communities. We've done those case studies in Japan, Chile, and France. And really what we see is the mobile network operators really want to play a part in keeping people safe. It's not a commercial activity, but it's part of also being a part of society and recognizing that disasters and emergencies are highly detrimental and everyone has a role to play in keeping people safe. So we see a lot of different financing models, a lot of different policy frameworks, but we often see that if mobile network operators are brought to the table early and understand the approach, they're always willing to take part. And that's why the research that we have done really demonstrates how to make the most of those partnerships and how clear roles and responsibilities, what's expected of different players really helps for the kind of collaboration to bring forward a really effective early warning system.
That's fantastic. Also, from a perspective of, as you say, sharing is caring, or as they say, in the sense of those use cases. And if we come back to the sort of next area I wanted to explore is obviously, let's say a country has implemented one of these early warning systems. Have you got any examples where this has really affected people's lives in practice? By use of such a system, is that where you're going? Wow, that made a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, the systems that we've been working on are just coming into play now. And what we see, so there's a huge amount. There are several countries in the world that already use cell broadcast technology, but we see really the excitement of the authorities, the disaster management agencies, and also the communities in bringing these systems into force. So we work in the Pacific Islands with the Pacific Islands Telecommunications Association. And that partnership has been really interesting because all the mobile network operators in the region are involved. All the disaster management agencies, the meteorological offices, and often up to the head of state are fully behind this. And we really see that the interest in implementing this technology and the public interest as well in it. So in the Solomon Islands and the Cook Islands, we're working towards the national test. So as you mentioned, we've had national tests here in the UK in past years of our cell broadcast system here. And that testing to familiarize the population with what to expect and to test if it's working, do things need to be updated or amended are really important. So we're really encouraged that we're getting close to doing those national tests in some of the Pacific Island countries where we're supporting.
So I was actually in a meeting, and I can't divulge who it was, with one of the operators here in Europe, and the person in charge of setting up the system. And he said it actually was quite a load on the network because guess what? Within a very short time, all the subscribers are basically notified, stroke respond to the network. So almost like a denial of service attack. It's sort of like it really does take the network to another level, if you like, from a performance perspective. So it's not the normal day that the full network is being tested to that degree, but it is quite an exercise. So I thought that was interesting in itself. Well, obviously, we didn't mention so on, but we're partially having this because you're actually visiting the AI for Good Summit in Geneva tomorrow, I believe. So we'll come to that in a minute. But to what extent, because the AI for Good Summit is about also using AI, so to what extent are you using AI or data-driven approach in an ethical way in your program?
AI is such a powerful tool and increasingly so in times of emergency. A good example is that it can really help us to know who can be actually reached by an early warning system and who can't. So we're part of the Early Warnings for All initiative. It was launched in 2022 by the UN Secretary General. And the ambition of that initiative is for everyone in the world to be protected by an early warning system. And within that initiative, we support something called the Early Warning Connectivity Map. So it was launched by the International Telecommunication Union, our close partners, and other partners involved are Microsoft AI for Good Lab, Planet Labs, University of Washington. Despite the global expansion of mobile networks, so we talked about 96% of the world's population being covered by a network, there are still connectivity gaps. And connectivity gaps often in our places where you see a lot of natural hazards or you see a lot of emergencies. So reaching people with timely information and early warnings is extremely important, but that those connectivity gaps are really a barrier. So using AI and satellite imagery, this project looks at where people are located and it overlays that with connectivity data to look at who might not be receiving early warning alerts, mobile, digital early warning alerts. That really helps governments, regulators, mobile operators, humanitarians, because when you know there's a population that's not covered, you have to make sure they're reached in another way. Sirens, TV, radio. The best early warning system is when you use all these different channels. So, what I like about this question or this use case is that the use of AI is very practical. It's really practical about who's our early warning system reaching and who is it not reaching and what do we do about that? And so that's the early warning connectivity map.
You just triggered a few thoughts in my mind. We've actually had some guests who've done mapping as well, and definitely you're going to the right summit, because also last year, as I said, we interviewed a few other guests, and they're also, using AI for and mapping things like the UN Ops. I don't know if the UN Ops, you know them, who are basically involved with ordnance worldwide, trying to track where ordnance might be, which is an amazing story in itself. So with you going to the AI for Good Summit, as mentioned, you're actually going tomorrow for the first time. Who are the sort of people you're wanting to meet? And I believe you also may be speaking. Is that right? You've got a speaking slot? So maybe you can talk about your speaking slot and what you're going to talk about and who are the great people you hope to meet.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the summit this year. As you mentioned, I haven't had a chance to attend before, and it's a big priority in the calendar this year because the AI for Good Summit really brings together all the right players for us: innovators, governments, mobile network operators, the technology ecosystem. And I'll be speaking on a session on the morning of the 9th of July on the early warning connectivity map with ITU and some of those other partners that I mentioned. Another reason that the AI for Good Summit is so important to us and for me specifically this year is because I also lead our emerging tech program in the GSMA Mobile for Development Foundation. And that's looking about how we leverage AI specifically to solve development challenges in low and middle income countries. So there's three things that I'll be focusing on under our emerging tech work. And the first is the AI language gap. We just launched some research a few months ago about the role of the mobile ecosystem and what that role is in making AI work in local languages, not just a handful of dominant languages. There's also, there's a broader GSMA AI African AI Languages Initiative, which is really taking shape and bringing together a huge ecosystem of players on the African continent. So I'm excited about the languages discussion on AI. The second is about edge AI. We published research just last week about how AI can be deployed in low resource and low connectivity environments. And that's really important in some low and middle income countries or places where connectivity capabilities are lower. And you can move processing closer to the device or the network edge, not relying on fully on cloud infrastructure. And that has the potential to make AI more affordable, more resilient, more accessible. And the third thing I'm excited about is I'm really going to be promoting our partners and our innovators that we support through our GSMA Innovation Fund, who are developing practical AI-enabled solutions in lots of sectors: health, agriculture, climate resilience. So there's so many things at the summit I'm excited about. It's just a matter of being able to meet all the people I want to and attend all the fantastic sessions that are offered during the week.
Well, if you're okay with it, maybe we can use this as an extension to that. So if anyone's listening and wants to reach out to you, they can do that as well. I was intrigued. Again, you triggered a few thoughts of some of the guests we've had, like Farmer Chat. I don't know if you heard of them, but they were guests recently as well, which obviously is helping farmers to be more efficient and better at what they do. But also, I think you mentioned then there's a fund, if I understood you correctly, a GSMA fund. Did you say? to help people, maybe some initial investment, I guess, or seed funding, is that sort of thing? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been running the GSMA Innovation Fund for several years. We provide grants and technical assistance to startups, SMEs in low and middle income countries, often local innovators who are solving all different types of challenges, whether that be humanitarian challenges like early warning systems, agriculture solutions, climate solutions, and our recent round is AI focused, so it's across many sectors. And those digital innovations, we also make sure we bring them into the mobile ecosystem to help them scale. So there's fantastic alumni and current innovators that we've worked with over around 10 years. And they're really kind of an inspiring part of our work. And we've seen some of them do fantastically well.
That's good to hear. If we come back to the area of the event, in the sense, because the thing, I know that the AI for Good Summit people, the organizers from the ITU, what they're proud about is bring together all the stakeholders. So, as you say, not just mobile governments as well, and people that really can see the impact. So the question I want to ask there is around, do you think there's anything on the policy or industry changes which could maybe have a larger impact that you'd like to see adopted across the field or across the ecosystem, which makes it more doable? Because you mentioned on one side there's the goal of creating these emergency services for everyone. That's nice and good, but and then you say they're different financial models, but is there something, a tweak or an improvement where you'd go, actually, this will be adopted quicker or maybe more effective if this could change? Because that's the world stage you're on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's absolutely it, that the partners that they convene, and sometimes I would say the unlikely partners, and that's a really key part of our work. Mobile network operators and humanitarians don't often come together, but that's the partnerships that we built to deliver these solutions. Yeah, if we think about what needs to be tweaked or changed, so we're working to support development of early warning systems in several countries and regions, as are many different partners. And we've talked a bit about cell broadcast, and cell broadcast is the one of the most effective ways to alert people in advance of disasters. You mentioned the network congestion. Cell broadcast is a fantastic technology because it's a lot on the network, but it can deliver millions of alerts within seconds at scale. But these systems, they don't happen on their own. The coordination, the partnership between all these players that we've been talking about is essential. But also financing can be a key barrier to implement the cell broadcast system. And our role is to make sure all the right stakeholders are ready. We call it cell broadcast readiness to tender or to set up their system. But even though sometimes all the partners are ready, the financing is not always there to finalize the system. So one tweak we would see is that there was specific support to set up cell broadcast systems, but it's interesting because we've seen some fantastic progressive and innovative, I would say, policy models that are emerging, particularly in Thailand and Argentina. Both of those countries are now using their Universal Service Fund to finance their cell broadcast system. So the Universal Service Fund, your listeners may not be aware, is levies on telecommunications sector revenues that are often used to expand connectivity to rural areas. But Thailand and Argentina both have made policy changes, and they're using that Universal Service Fund to implement their cell broadcast system. So many other countries are interested in that, and we're making sure that we can share that evidence information. We're highlighting it at GSMA's global and regional events. And I think changes like that and other financing that can come in will really help to set up these life-saving systems that we need so quickly.
That's a very, very elegant suggestion there, as you say, because it's a question of tapping into the right resources, and if it's there, as you say, it's being collected. So I'm sure other countries can benefit from that as well. So it's wonderful stuff you're doing, but I just also would like to always ask the question of, you're doing your job, and as you say, you've got a lot on your plate, let's say more than most. But if you look at beyond your own plate and what you can do, what do you see are the most urgent issues that you'd like to see someone address? And the reason why it also gives thought to other people is to, right, that needs also addressing. We're trying to spread the word and give people thoughts as to what they what could be done? I mean, it might be directly something similar, from the GSMA work that you're doing, but of course could be something else that you just feel worldwide has to be tackled.
Yeah, I think inclusivity in early warning systems, making sure they reach everyone, is something that's, well, I would say actually inclusivity overall. But inclusivity in early warning system, what does that mean for us? It means that everybody is reached, whether that's through mobile or digital or other means, and making sure you set up a system that can reach everyone, whether that be languages, persons with disabilities, elderly people. So the technology can be there, and the technology can be set up, but it takes a lot of work to make sure everyone's included and receives the information that they need or they will need. I would say something similar on the connectivity for refugees work. For refugees to be included, they need to be able to access digital services in their own name. We spoke about that. But also, there are several other barriers that our program or the GSMA alone cannot address. Our sister program on the digital inclusion side do a lot of work on digital skills and digital literacies. That's a huge barrier for people to be able to meaningfully use mobile internet. The final thing I would say is actually the usage gap and the coverage gap. There's 3.4 billion people in the world who are not using mobile internet. And actually, of those 3.4 billion, 3.1 billion have access to a mobile network, but they're not using it. And there's several reasons and barriers that come into play, whether that's trust, affordability, digital skills, as I mentioned. So I think for everyone to be able to benefit from mobile internet, we really need to work all together to address those barriers. And that's not something that the GSMA can do alone. It's something for the whole ecosystem to address together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're touching an interesting area, which I guess is very much in the news at the moment about going towards space as connectivity perspective. I seem to remember years ago, but still think it's valid that only 10% of the world's surface or something is actually covered by terrestrial sites. So it's still a very small part of the surface of the world. So related to looking a bit beyond your own work as well, is there anyone that you admire who's helping in the UN sustainability goals using mobile technology and AI? Someone you want to mention where you sort of benchmark yourself and you go, well, that's something really cool that they're doing there?
I mean, it is a little bit in our portfolio, but it's the organizations that we have the opportunity to work with through our GSMA Innovation Fund. I mean, I have to mention those innovators because they are doing such fantastic things, often with little resources, and they know their local context. I mean, that's the most important thing is that when we partner with different organizations in certain countries, we're led by them, like the Pacific Islands Telecoms Association. They know what's best in their local context and what's needed, and we provide some of our expertise, our technical support. But those innovators where we provide that funding, we provide that technical assistance, are doing a huge amount of fantastic work. I would probably want to highlight Connect Here, an organization we've supported through our innovation fund. They work on disability inclusion and to make sure that critical services and information get to people who are a part of the deaf community. And that comes back to the inclusivity piece, which is fantastic. So they do excellent work.
One of the things from last year's AI for Good Summit, which they highlighted, was they were talking about Generation Alpha. And they said, guess what? That's the generation who are born with AI, from birth, if you like, and living in AI world. So to an entrepreneur or a younger person who's sort of starting up and wants to try and do good, social good using AI for humanitarian actions, any advice as to how they get involved in it and and make a difference?
Yeah, I would say that advice that I would have is to work with people who don't think like you. Find people who are thinking differently. I think that the challenges that we face in the world today need all different players. And I think it's easy for everyone to kind of stay in their own lane and work with like-minded organizations, like-minded individuals that are kind of close to you or beside you. And I think it's really important to reach out and work with people who think differently or are doing things differently. Because when we look at these complex challenges, I think the space that we find to solve them and the innovations that we find to solve them are somewhere in between. That's why I joined the GSMA. I had worked in the humanitarian sector for 20 years, and I still do because we lead a humanitarian program. But I was curious about the role of digital and the role of telecoms. And it's that intersection between humanitarian and telecommunications that we deliver all of our work with our partners. So I think sometimes you can find the most scalable solutions when you're curious, when you look beyond your own backyard in a way. And people will teach you a lot if they're used to doing things differently. And I think that can be really exciting.
Very interesting insight there. I think it's quite difficult to find other people naturally, if you see what I mean. But on the same token, as you say, if you can get that melting pot going, you'll end up with a better soup than if you just feel the broth. It was just a coin a phrase which has never existed yet. But there you go. I've just coined a phrase. A broth, a soup rather than a broth. As
Very
well.
good.
There we go. But I've now given you a bit more thinking time. So as I say, we're actually getting to, and we like to, as I say, give back to the community as well. So shout out time. So I know you've already given one, but I imagine you've got a few other up your sleeve. And anyone else or anyone doing good that you feel that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'd like to I really want to name the organization Connect Here from Pakistan and tell you a bit more about the work that they're doing because it's fantastic and it's really interesting. So and they're also AI led as well. So I think it's relevant for our discussion today. So they've developed solutions that make disaster information and services accessible to deaf communities. So the founders, their names are Azima and Arham. They're really impressive young entrepreneurs from Pakistan. And they're tackling something that's often overlooked about how to include everyone, how to reach everyone. And really what stands out is they're not just using AI to deliver accessibility at scale in terms of disaster information, early warning systems. They're also building AI in a way that itself is accessible. So it's locally grounded, it's lightweight, it's practical for low resource environments. We talked about where connectivity, devices, infrastructure can be limited. And so they're working on a real foundational work for sign language technology and what is needed for it to advance. So they're building one of the largest and most comprehensive sign language data sets in the world. And that can help future AI systems better understand and generate sign language. So if we think about that potential in terms of AI and sign language, their ambition is not just to meet accessibility needs, but to create a future where internet and digital services are not limited to text and voice, and that it's also accessible through sign language. And so I have to give that shout out to Connect Here because they're a fantastic organization.
That's a great one. I think of the scalability of it as well. So again, people listening to the podcast, reach out to us and to you. I'm sure there are other countries that can benefit from that. As you say, they're actually building a data set or their own sort of library, which can then be used across countries. Fantastic. That's great. So you're now part of the Digital Talk family, and it's been a great pleasure to have you on our podcast, Kimberly, and learn how the GSMA is working with mobile operators, policymakers, and partners to apply digital technologies and AI to development and humanitarian challenges.
It's been great to be here, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's been great to have you as well.
Thank you so much.
Did you know?
Did you know that only around 40 countries in the world are currently using cell broadcast technology for early warning systems? Cell broadcast can send emergency alerts to millions of people within seconds in a specific location without network congestion. So we're working with governments, regulators, mobile network operators in several countries to help put the partnerships, policies, and technical foundations in place to deploy these life-saving mobile-enabled systems.
If you have enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate us and subscribe. And feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you have comments and ideas for future episodes, please send us an email. Thanks for being part of the Digital Talk community. Stay tuned.